we're talking about homelessness, and everybody in society knows about it. We're plagued by it. I guess you shouldn't say plagued because that would imply that you know it's a disease. It's something that is all around negative, and I think that it's like a seven-headed dragon. So you
Right.
deal with it exactly in society when we deal with homeless people, interact with them. You know, what do you think that their stance on where they're at is?
Well, I think the most important thing that we have to separate when it comes to homelessness is the person from the homelessness status. A lot of people call them homeless people, but essentially they are people experiencing homelessness. Um, and it varies when you're speaking with people day to day or interacting with people who experience homelessness. Their take might be different. It could be circumstantial, it could be from financial or, criminal history. So it really depends on the person.
Yeah, it's a like I said, it's a seven-headed dragon because you've got people that I've met who want to be homeless. They don't want the bills, they don't want responsibilities. They look at it as, hey, I'll go work somewhere for a periodic, like let's say, a month or a few weeks even, and then they'll quit. And then they're like, hey, I'm a transient. And then like let's say they live in a certain region of the US, when it gets cold, they'll go to
Hmm.
California or Florida. And then they're totally happy with that.
Right.
But then obviously you have I think if I had to have an opinion on it, I don't know as much about it as you do, but do you think that do you think it breaks down to two things, mental health and substance abuse?
No, not necessarily. I think it stems from how you grew up, your childhood traumas, whatever financial situation your parents are in, what you're used to, the traumas that you experience through life.
So
I don't think it's me not wanting to get a job or me not wanting to apply myself. It's I have been plagued with all of these social barriers in my life, and it's a cycle that I can't break out of. And now I'm in a state of homelessness and I don't know how to get out and I don't know how to ask for that help.
well, when you meet these types of people, is there a range of difficulty? Like
Oh, absolutely.
you've got people that, and let's face it, there's some people that I mean, they need constant care or constant intervention. I
Yes.
don't know what you would, but
Absolutely. So there are folks who are experiencing homelessness that show up in the system who have a job. They have finances. They just don't have, the security deposit to put down on a home, or they don't have the case management support to help guide them through the application process. There are resources available for that helps that. But then there are also clients who show up in the system who are chronically homeless, who do need an extra level of care. So permanent supportive housing, it's also known as PSH, but there's a PSH level of care where the household is connected directly to case management services, financial services to support their housing, food, utility assistance. So it's more of like a wraparound care, whereas there might be someone who just needs rental assistance for 12 months until they can stabilize and get on their feet, which is called rapid rehousing. RRH, you might hear it as, but that's an opportunity for folks who are on the cusp of, getting out of their homelessness status and stabilizing their lives for their families.
so they're almost like on the cusp because that's what people don't realize is like you can be you're one thin veil away from being homeless yourself,
Right.
and especially with all the stuff we have going on. But so when you have people, I mean, you don't deal with these people. You're not dealing with them day to day, like face to face. But you obviously know that they are in this position where, hey, they need help. Your company tries to go out and, I mean, how does that whole process? How does it start? Do they apply or do they? How does that like whole thing even, yeah, come to
Right.
fruition with them?
So it's a full process. There's not one person doing all of the work. It's many people doing lots of things to ensure that people are able to get housed and stay stably housed. It starts with our outreach team. Community outreach teams are going out, they're meeting folks on the ground at camps or at shelters, getting them connected to the coordinated entry system, which
Mm.
allows them to essentially begin to get the help that they need to be able to get housed. From the outreach team, it gets sent over to the navigation team. So there is a system housing navigation team that goes out and is a helping hand with the household to help them go through that application process when it comes to finding a house, securing documents like social security cards or birth certificates, because a lot of times those things get lost and they're hard to obtain. And when you're up for housing, you have to have those with you. After the navigation team is able to get someone housed, and it shifts over to the case management team to follow up with the household, provide some sustainability plans for them, and work with them so that they're able to meet their goals that they have for themselves. Where my company particularly steps in is we are providing sometimes rental assistance for households for up to 24 months, but mostly we're providing barrier busting funds to help folks get housed. So providing that security deposit, paying off past evictions, covering app fees. So whatever barriers someone might encounter, the organization that I work for, they help to reduce those barriers.
Now, is this taxpayer money? I'm not, like I said, some people get upset. They're like, well, if I have to go to work and I have to get up and I have to, you know, work 60 hours a week, sometimes working two. I mean, I've been there, you've been there. Obviously, all the other factors that we just talked about, those are those are those are roadblocks for these people, but are these taxpayer dollars that are being used or what?
So there are monies that are put aside to help reduce homelessness, whether it be from tax dollars or not. There's HUD funded programs like Home ARP or Emergency Solutions Grant. I'm going to try not to use acronyms, but it's money set aside for our homeless population. We all pay taxes. Taxes go to many, many different programs, but there are also philanthropic funders who like to give back to the community. A lot of the dollars that we work with are coming from philanthropic funders who want to see homelessness get eradicated in our city.
Rich people.
Essentially,
Well, hey,
rich
hey,
people's company.
if I had that, yeah, if I had that level of wealth, I don't know what else. I couldn't think of a better reason to use the money.
Absolutely, because it works. You can see it. It's tangible.
Yeah.
You know that this money is getting someone housed and it's getting them assistance and they're getting the help that they need. So it's visible, the impact.
Well, I try not to drop his name too much, but I was watching Joe Rogan and they said something about, I think it was in Austin. It's called the Turnkey Project. Was that what it was? But they took a hotel and I don't know if they're monitored in there. I don't know how that works, but it's like 2,000 people. I probably have that number wrong. The I have the gist of it, but yeah, they basically have this hotel and they
Right. Yeah. So it's called a non-congregate shelter. We actually had one of those in Indianapolis, and the team that I currently oversee was in the non-congregate shelter, working day in and day out to ensure that folks transitioned.
what does non-congregate mean?
So essentially, during COVID, they placed a lot of folks who were in shelters in shared spaces into the non congregate shelter, like a hotel, to be able to separate people. COVID was very easily spreadable. People needed their own spaces. There's not a lot of space to put folks who are experiencing homelessness very rapidly. So the hotels that did provide that service and did a tremendous job with doing that for our neighbors.
So they're trying to isolate them.
Right.
Okay.
But
But
it also was a huge benefit because they were able to get connected to the navigation team, outreach team, case management team, and the financial services to be able to transition from that non-congregate shelter to their housing.
okay. And then this is obvious. This is in Indianapolis, so it's a
Correct.
big city. And then you were telling me some numbers at one point. I know it's went down. The number of total homeless, is that a census you guys go out and do, or do they come in and do you just count them through like how many people you have in your system that are receiving benefits, or how do you tell it?
Every year we do a point in time count. Sometimes it's called PIT, and it's a day of the year, usually in January, where we take a snapshot of all the folks who are reporting as homeless in Indianapolis. That number fluctuates from year to year. Of course, we want that number to decrease. Our PIT numbers haven't been released yet this year, but they should be released on Wednesday. And so we'll know whether that number increased or decreased.
Mm. So what do they do? Obviously, in the Midwest, the northern regions of the U.S., the winter is hard. That's something that I've always been kind of baffled by is their ability, their resilience to be able to survive in these climates where it's
Right.
negative wind chills and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And I tell people too that some people have very just, I mean, they're just, for lack of a better word, they're just assholes. They think that these people have no place in society whatsoever,
Hmm.
and they're a drain on resources. They're all criminals. They're all bad people, and they're just there to be you know I guess an eyesore if you want to call it that. But um, I look at when I see stuff like that, it's like, man, like I don't know what that person's intentions are because I look at it like we were talking about at the beginning of this. Each person is an individual,
Right.
whether they're doesn't matter what job, what function they have. So I look at that individual person. I'm like, man, is there something I could do
Right.
to do that? But then obviously you run into the problem of, well, I'm just an ordinary person. I don't have the philanthropy, the dollars, and I don't have the resources to pull together and help this one guy and then this person and that person. So
Right.
what do you is that something that because some shelters have like a limit on how long they could stay in the shelter. It might be one. I've heard of it being one night a month, and it's like what that's almost a slap in the face.
Right. Well, so we do have winter contingency. So during the winter months, we do up the capacity of our shelters so that more folks are able to come in and stay longer. We ensure that we're providing extra care during that time because we understand that it is cold. We don't want our neighbors to be outside during the winter months. So we do have winter contingency plans that assist with that. And to your other point, which was
No, that was it. I was just
right.
wondering what they do, because like I said, I see them. We all see, you
Right.
might be out going out to eat in January.
Yes. So you were saying, like, how can you show up? How can you help without the philanthropic backing? You can show up at those shelters. You can volunteer. It could be as simple as, providing canned goods or showing up and washing dishes during, the day center feeding hours. You can do volunteer outreach work. There are so many ways that we can show up in our community, whether it be financial through donations to local organizations or boots on the ground, going out to shelters and helping.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of stuff on. Obviously, it's one section of America, but it's just so it's kind of infamous Skid Row in LA. It's like 50 square blocks of it might be more than that, but you see that and you just they've almost like figured out a way that they can survive in their own community.
Right, absolutely.
But they do. I think they do get some support. And like I said, I don't live in LA. I don't know anything about. Everyone knows what Skid Row is,
Right.
but it's just it's kind of to me. It's almost like when I see it, I think that those people could be anything they want to be if they could get the help they needed, right? But then it stems down to you got to develop a care plan for them. Is it substance abuse?
Hmm.
Because that's got to be another big thing. Is the trauma they experienced,
Hmm.
they turn to drugs to kind of numb that pain.
Right.
Do you see a lot of that?
Yeah, we see it all the time, but we work off of a housing first model, which essentially means we house them regardless. We work to get them the care that they need, but everyone deserves safe, affordable, stable housing. So our goal is to get them housed and then focus on that after.
What about people coming out of prison? You know,
Oh, absolutely. So we have a reentry coalition that works to help those returning from incarceration to get housed. So the Marion County Reentry Coalition works closely with folks who are returning from incarceration.
And then is this the long? I mean, so is each? I don't know. You may have already answered this. Is each person or each? Are they like divided into categories where it's like, hey, this person might need help for? You said something about how you guys have people that are they got 1 foot in, 1 foot out,
Right.
right?
Right.
And then once you get them, it's kind of like taking the training wheels off. They need the training wheels, and then you take them off, and they're good. Or
Some people, they self-sustain. They're able to exit programs and continue to cover their own bills, utilities. But then there are some folks who return to homelessness. Um, but again, we still show up for them and we provide the same level of care and resources to help restabilize them if that occurs.
okay, yeah, I think that's. I mean, that's it's to me. It seems like when you have a ongoing problem in society like that, because everyone, I feel like everyone has that question: is this a long term thing? Is it actually changing? Are the numbers going down?
Mhm.
And people don't know that stuff. They
Right.
they see the same. They might see the same person.
Hmm.
Because you and I have the one person that we're familiar with, but he was a character. But it's like it's one of those things where it's I don't know. I think that in my line of work, I see him a lot. I talk to him a lot, and I don't know. It's tough because I think, man, this is, you can debate that on almost with anyone. You could say, hey, how would you fix homelessness? How would you,
Hmm.
strategize a program or figure out what you would even start? And I just think like, okay, well, and I remember now I read something about Reagan was kind of like, and this isn't about politics, but he kind of started the uh, eradication of like the asylums.
Hmm.
Now I've heard some bad things about the asylums because
Yeah.
the treatment
Hmm.
and everybody needed a lobotomy and
Right.
like
Unethical practices.
sexual abuse, torture. Just I'm not saying I think that. What are your viewpoints on having facilities where maybe there's levels of care where it's like, hey, you're this level, you obviously need closer supervision. You're this level, you go out, you work, you come back, and then maybe you have it almost sounds like a halfway house. It sounds terrible, but like they take a certain portion of their funds,
Hmm.
but then that's not fair. That's not fair to that particular resident because then they have to pay a certain portion of their paycheck to live there,
Right.
and they never. It's like a
Yeah, but I mean, it's all part of the process. It has to do with capacity, funding, people's ability to self-sustain. If they're staying in, if they're returning from incarceration and they're in a halfway house, that's just the nature of, the beast. They have to pay that. Um, Eventually they find gainful employment, and they're able to cover that if they're able. But again, if there are resources that can help people sustain, even if it's for rental assistance or, for food or what have you, I encourage them to reach out and get that assistance until they're able to get on their feet.
yeah. Yeah, like I said earlier, it's one of those things that you could definitely say once you talk to someone that knows about all this stuff, you feel, I feel better about it. I feel like okay, at least
There
there
are
there.
things getting done. There are people on the ground.
Well, it's complicated though because what you're describing is like several different tiers and has a pretty large like spread out response that involves I don't know how many people, but
Oh, right. It's a community-wide effort. It takes every single person to essentially be at the table. We rely on our neighbors experiencing homelessness to be on our boards. They guide the work that we do. We can't do it for them without them. So they're showing up as well.
yeah. Well, I think it's great. I didn't know all that because we all think of it 30 seconds a day because we see.
Right. It's visible, and there's always been a concern about the visibility of homelessness. You might have people who put dollars behind it to make sure it's not visible. That's not the case all of the time, but usually if,
What
people want it to
what's that called in?
release
Is it New
those.
York? Yeah. Well, God, what's it called in New York? Is it in New York? There's several places. They've made it to where like places that homeless people would frequent to like lay down or whatever, they
Right.
would put bar like metal
Right.
rod. Oh man,
And
what's
it's
it
so
called?
humane. It's easier to send an outreach person out there to speak to those folks to help get them moved, or, you know, try to provide them with a resource. And I've seen, rocks at buildings, you know, people pouring water on benches. It's like, if someone really needs a place to lay
It's
down,
further than that. This is like
they
this is
let them lay
architect. Man, it's there's some kind of there's it's called like something architecture or something.
down. Mhm.
Um, but yeah, they permanently alter.
Mhm.
I mean, they yeah they make it to where you can't. It would be so uncomfortable or
Right.
physically impossible for you to lay or sit in a
Right, and the money that they put behind those projects, they can be putting towards rental assistance or towards
yeah.
shelters, or, there are other places that they can
But kind
funnel
of
that.
going back to what I was saying, so the people that they just want to go out and they want to I guess train hop to the West Coast when it's warm or when it's cold everywhere else.
Right.
Those people, you're just like, hey, they want. You're not. I mean, I guess you can anyway, but you're not forcing anything on them. If they're like, hey, listen,
Absolutely not. Yeah, they can port in and port out. So if someone has a voucher and they want to port to a different state, they can begin that process. So their voucher will follow them to the next state that they go to. Granted, it takes a while for that to happen. Usually housing authorities or agencies, they take a little bit longer to process. Some are quicker than others, so it truly just depends on where they're going.
hmm, well, I don't think I got anything else for you. That was very informative, and like I said, I'm pretty sure, and I'm pretty sure a lot of the viewers didn't know that. So, and you're a vice president. You're
Right. So, Vice President of Rental Assistance Programs, my role is a collaborative role between different agencies. So, again, not one person doing all of the work, it's a lot of people doing the work all at once. We're all working towards the same goal of ending homelessness in Indianapolis. So, I'm one small component of that. But I do think that if we continue the route that we're going with the way that we do the work, that we're going to have much success in Indianapolis with the way that homelessness systems work. We're working on system change. The efforts that my team works on currently will help shape the way that we approach homelessness in Indianapolis and the way that we provide assistance and solutions. It's so easy to come to anyone with a problem, but it's harder to strategize that solution. And we are in the midst of, strategizing the solutions.
how long has this kind of like idea been around?
So the initial idea of Home Now Indie came about in 2019 or 2020 when they were developing an application for philanthropic dollars in our community. We officially launched in March of 2022. But
That wasn't long ago.
it wasn't long ago for the initiative. So the Home Now Indie initiative is the thought process that everybody's working together. The work has been going on for forever. Everybody's been doing it, but it's truly just identifying lanes to make the end-to-end housing process more efficient. We collaborate a lot more. We communicate a lot more. We're in the same meeting spaces. Nobody's really siloed like it used to be. So I think that the Home Now India initiative idea is one that creates that system levels change that really helps with ending homelessness in our community.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for sitting
Absolutely.
down. Guest number one. So
Yes.
I don't think we did too bad
Yeah,
at all.
I'm glad to be here. If ever you need me to come back, I'll be back out here every day,
Yeah.
considering
Yeah. Well,
I live so close.
oh my God. This is my significant other. She was my
Hi.
guinea pig, but there was a valid reason to have you do this because if we didn't have anything, because like I said, man, the homelessness is such a, I mean,
Right.
you can't bring up any problem in society without bringing up that just, to
Right.
me, it comes up to the forefront. It's almost like it ties into so many things.
Right. Absolutely.
And I think that there's a lack of knowledge, obviously,
Mhm.
and that's the number one thing I wanted to kind of push out there. Yeah, obviously, all this stuff, and you work on the forefront of with all these people and all these programs, and but then like you said, you have a lot of jaded people. They're like, well, if I, and it's simple. And I can understand it to a certain extent, but I've never experienced it, and you almost can't relate because you're not in that situation.
Right.
But yeah, no, thank you. But yeah, well, hopefully, hopefully this is gonna have some really good. I think it'll be really good.
Yes, absolutely. So again, this, it doesn't stop here. As folks learn more, I'm not the end all be all. I have a lot of great information because I'm doing the work day to day. But I encourage you all to do your research about homelessness in your community. Uh, Take action, whether it's donating funds to local organizations, showing up to shelters and volunteering, getting on boards in different communities or local organizations that you're interested in to really start to make an impact.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Oh, all right. I think that's a wrap.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Yep, you're welcome. Guys, like, subscribe, and see you on the next one.